Today we're talking about amphibians and reptiles. So we're moving on, machining through to get to the end of the week. So you saw there's some frog barely preserved in a jar. So let's talk about amphibians. What do we need to know about amphibians? So we talk about fish. The development of fish basically is the story, the development of the skeleton, right? So early fish just had that, were kind of spongy, very primitive. There was that one that even looked like a sponge that squishes back and forth. But the nerves, unlike invertebrates, where the invertebrates had two sort of nerves, or nerves just sort of generally spread out through the body, here one nerve cord started to develop that runs down the spine. That's what makes them chordata. They've got the pharyngeal gills and the nerve cord and the tail. Remember, those are the things that make them members of the phylum Chordate. And a notochord, which is a little kind of stiffening, a little denser tissue that runs in front of the nerve cord. And then we saw earlier fish that, like those lampreys, the ones with the sucker, with the horrible sucker, that the nerve cord started to grow thicker and stronger, and then eventually we start to move to the most successful subclasses of the phylum Chordata, and those are the vertebrates. So we start to get we get those ones with the really thick notochord. So yeah, the lampreys. Then we start to get the class. So those are class Agnatha. Then we get class osteo blah 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 blah. The cartilaginous fish. So sharks and skates and manta rays. So they don't have a hard bony skeleton. They have a cartilaginous skeleton with hard scales on the outside for protection. And then we get hard skeleton bony fish. And bony fish have ribs to protect their body. It takes the pressure off the scales. They develop a fish bladder. And some of these fish end up they have lobed, lots of complicated fins, so they can do lots of swimming. Those hard bones are in those fins. And some of them learn how to gulp air because, maybe things are drying up or they're being chased by predators and they need to get out of the water and take a big gulp of air. And those fish, those bony lobed fish, eventually evolve into amphibians. Okay, there it is. Evolve from lobed finned fishes. So the big characteristic of amphibians is that they have to undergo metamorphosis, because it's not really, we like to think that amphibians have this superpower because they can live in the water and they can live on dry land. They can breathe underwater and breathe on land. It's not really a superpower. It's more of a detriment. How about that word? Because they have to have water nearby. They're sort of like mosses. Remember mosses? How mosses had to reproduce their sperm, and the eggs, the sperm had to swim through water. Well, that's the whole problem that amphibians have. Their reproduction is totally dependent on water. They haven't fully adapted to living on land. So they need water. So they need to go through this metamorphosis because they need basically to live in water while they're wee bairn. They need to reproduce in water, and then they can move out of the water when they're an adult. So, what can we talk about them? Well, they lay eggs. So they lay eggs. We've seen a lot of eggs. Eggs, and so they undergo this metamorphosis. So they start off as eggs, They turn into tadpoles. The eggs they lay in water. And the eggs are very simple. They're sort of like yolk, and then the zygote is inside, or the critter's inside. And the tadpoles, first they live off the egg, like they carry the egg. Here you can kind of see it. This is sort of what's left of the egg, sort of. This is kind of a big tadpole. But the early ones, they sort of live off the egg. Then finally, as they get bigger, they get gills, and they also get a mouth, and they start being able to eat. They eat little things in the water, and then eventually little legs appear and a tail, and then they grow bigger and bigger, and they become a frog, a tetrapod. Tetrapod just means they have 4 limbs, and these are very simple. They're the most simple 4-limbed creatures. So the adults, big evolutionary jump here is, so they have gills when they're little, but when they're adults, they have lungs. Now, their lungs aren't great. Their lungs aren't super duper efficient. They also have a 3-chambered heart. So they've got this adaptation over fish. Fish only had a 2-chambered heart. So if we remember, where's the fish circulatory system? There. So fish have a 2-chambered heart. So basically they're just pushing everything. It's just pushing one thing. So it's going to the capillaries, blood's getting oxygen, it's going to the gills, it's getting oxygen, then it just gets pushed through. It's just slow and not as efficient system. Boom. Frogs and amphibians have a 3-chambered heart. So it's more complicated. There's kind of two systems. It can pump the blood faster this way. It's a little bit more, it's more efficient. This is the capillaries of the lung. This is where it picks up oxygen, and the capillaries of the skin. Because the lungs are not good enough. These lungs are not good enough at doing the best oxygen exchange. So frogs also have to do oxygen exchange on their skin. Who else had to do oxygen exchange on their skin? Remember that? Moist skin? Who else was it? It was annelids. It was the worms. Things to keep in mind for this next assignment that you're doing for this, which is going to go live momentarily. Worms had to do oxygen exchange. So the same thing here. They're doing oxygen exchange with lungs and with their skin. Some small frogs, I don't think they come with lungs. I don't remember now. The problem here, it's not as efficient because what's happening here is oxygenated and deoxygenated blood actually mix together. And so you're pumping blood that's deoxygenated along with the oxygenated blood. So you don't have fully oxygenated blood, okay? They're cold-blooded, so they can't regulate their temperature. They're ectothermic. Basically what that means is they depend on the temperature of the external environment, temperature of the water. So when winter frogs hibernate, they dig themselves into the ground and they go to sleep in the ground, in the mud, near lakes and ponds. And then in the spring, they all come out to mate. They all roll out of their beds to mate when it's a little bit warmer. And so there's the mating. So they have internal fertilization. Remember, we learned about that. That's better because you guarantee that the eggs and sperm will meet. And then the fertilized egg gets released in the water and they get left behind in the water. But frogs actually, they take care. Some of them take care of their young. He's a male frog. Here's a male frog taking care. Look at that. He's putting the little frog in his mouth so he doesn't get eaten. I bet you frogs are pretty stupid, so they probably sometimes eat their young, I would imagine. It happens. So there's the eggs. You can see they're just sort of a gel. There's not much. They don't have a lot of protection. They hide them, in the water. They'll lay them like under the leaves and things, so other fish and stuff can't eat them, or they kind of put them somewhere where they can't be eaten. You guys can read about that in here. Then there's the steps of the life cycle of the tadpole. There we go, tadpole to frog. They lose their tail, it all gets smaller. What else do I want to say about frogs? You know, you guys are responsible for reading all this. I guess the differences between frog and toad, I threw that in here. So toads spend more time on dry land. They're larger and they're better adapted at living on dry land. So frogs jump really, really far, but toads are really, really large. They also have warty and dry skin. But really what this is so they have better lungs, and so this skin they can afford to have tougher skin, so that they don't dry out. They can live in a drier environment, so they don't rely as much on skin breathing. You can look at those. Okay, that's amphibians. So then amphibians. Well, they like toads and things. They spend more and more time on dry land. They had selective pressure, whether there was predators in the water, whatever it was, kept them on dry land, and they had to adapt to live on land better. And that's what reptiles are. Reptiles are amphibians that have now fully adapted to live on land. They no longer need water for reproduction. It's key. They don't need water for reproduction, so they don't need to undergo metamorphosis. Reptiles don't need to do it, they don't do it. So here's some classes of reptiles, and they are quite diverse and quite successful. So there's snakes and turtles, iguanas, lizards, crocodiles, more snakes, tortoises. Here's just a nice video of a turtle eating a jellyfish that you guys can watch. The turtles cause so much trouble for us because they keep doing stupid things like eating. They keep thinking like plastic bags are jellyfish, and then now we can't have plastic bags. I really like plastic bags. I'm from the 20th century, okay? And then straws. Remember straws? There was the video of the turtle that had a straw up its nose. I mean, how often does that happen? So now we have to have paper straws, and paper straws suck. Let's just admit it. They're terrible. They get mushy so fast. You can't have a milkshake with a paper straw. Anyways, but it is. I mean, it's better for the environment, so it is good. I'm willing to sacrifice straws and plastic bags. Okay, so how do they adapt for land? What is their big thing? Well, the big thing is something called an amniotic egg. So their eggs aren't just simple jelly, non-multicellular, kind of basically, not much to them, just yolk and embryo eggs. Their eggs, multicellular, they have a thick leathery skin, so they can't dry out. They have all the nutrients. They basically have taken, the amniotic fluid is basically taking nutritious water and putting it inside an egg. So you don't have to live in the water because you've taken the water and you've packed it in an egg now, just enough of the water for the embryo to develop. So they come with a whole bunch of stuff. Look, nutrient, sac yolk, nutrient. There's a little alligator or whatever it is, and a whole big egg to protect it while it grows, develops inside the egg, and then when the egg hatches, alligator's ready to go. There's no metamorphosis. There's no nothing. It's ready to go on the ground. A reptile's ready to go. It's ready to start eating and doing things that reptiles do. It takes time for them to mature to reproduce, but they can walk, they can crawl, they can slither, they can do all the things. So that is a huge development, a huge adaptation for living on land. What else have they developed? So I'm not going to be able to go through all this stuff because you guys watch these. Watch it if the video too long. Just the difference between a turtle and a tortoise. Turtle flippers, tortoise feet. Tortoise for land, turtles for walking. They've also, so what's made reptiles so successful. Remember, reptiles used to rule the world when dinosaurs ruled the world. Dinosaurs are included in the reptile class. They ruled the world before, the asteroid gave us the advantage. So they have adapted to eating, to getting food. Remember, all of this about being an animal is about getting food and spreading the nutrients, right? Spreading the energy. Amphibians, they got that big tongue. They evolved a big, huge, sticky tongue, like frogs have evolved a big, huge, sticky tongue. for eating flies. Their heart, not the best at spreading nutrients, not the best at, and they're, like the lungs, not the best. So actually, a lot of frogs are endangered because, they're just not perfect yet. Reptiles, though, oh boy, are they doing much better, right? So they've got their heart, they still have a 3-chambered heart. Where's the reptile heart? But now it's got kind of more divisions. So you see here, there's a division here. And so the deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood don't mix as much. They're able to get more oxygenated blood into their tissues. So that blood has more oxygen, it's got more pump. They can have more energy to move. They're more efficient, so they can have more energy to move, to hunt, to do things. And so as a result, they've developed all kinds of cool methods for eating. So some of them, like turtles, lame turtles who keep eating plastic bags, they're kind of too slow, so they just are herbivores. They just eat plants and slow-moving jellyfish and plastic bags. And then a lot of reptiles are carnivorous, so they only eat meat. So there's ones that are like active hunters, like crocodiles. So they still don't have all the super-duper energy of like mammals and birds. So they have adapted to have hunting, really kind of interesting hunting methods. So crocodiles, for example, they sit in the water, they're camouflaged with muddy water, they sit at watering holes where a lot of animals are going to come to drink, and they're ambush hunters. So they sit and they wait, and when they conserve their energy, and when prey gets close enough, a young deer or whatever, a young gazelle gets too close, then they release all of their energy that the crocodiles have been saving, and with a huge, powerful jaw, they grab whatever it is, drag it into the water, drown it. They are able to thrash and break the neck. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to break the neck. They're trying to break bones, incapacitate their prey, and then they chew and eat it up with these horrible teeth, scary teeth. Reptiles have also developed to be venom hunters. So they have 2 fangs, 2 giant fangs, and venom is when it's venom, when it's not poison, it's venom because you are injecting it. So they have 2 fangs, and they bite into something, into an animal, inject them with the venom, and the venom paralyzes or kills the prey, and then they chew. They don't have teeth. Snakes don't have chewing teeth or grinding teeth. So they're able to unhinge their jaw. So basically, where you have the jaw hinge, they're able to unhinge it from the jaw and open up their mouth really big. And then they just sort of use their muscles to scoop up whatever it is. This is a possum or a rat or something. And then they don't have to eat for a really long time, for months. Often they just sit and digest that a possum or that rat for a very long time, or bunny or whatever it is, and they don't have to eat for quite a while because they conserve their energy, because they're not as efficient, they're not as mobile. They're also ectothermic, so they also are cold-blooded like amphibians, which means that they don't have they don't have all the homeostatic systems. They can't warm themselves efficiently. They have to rely on the heat of the sun. So at night they go dormant, and then in the heat of the day they're able to move. That's why there's not a lot of amphibians or there's frogs around here, but there's not a lot of snakes, not a lot of reptiles in the northern hemisphere because it's just too cold for most of the year for them to be able to effectively live. And then the last method of hunting that they've developed, and one of the last methods, is this constricting method. So boa constrictors, so they don't have venom. It's very expensive, expensive to make venom. So basically they will wrap themselves around. I don't know how do they do that. How do they trick the mouse to get in there? Like mice are fast, but no, they're able to do it somehow. Maybe when the mouse is sleeping, they sneak up quietly. Okay, so adaptations for land. Like I said, amniotic egg protects developing embryo, a more efficient heart, more efficient lungs, so they don't need to do exchange by it. They have better legs for support. Lungs are more efficient. They have better kidneys, so they're able to remember those nitrogenous wastes. That's a whole problem. All these guys have kidneys, but they're not as these guys. This finally we got starting to get really good kidneys. Reptiles pee. And they have thick, scaly skin, so they can't dry out. So they don't have to breathe through their skin anymore because their lungs are so efficient. Their circulatory system is a lot more efficient. So now they've evolved skin that they can, and the problem is they have to be out in the sun to keep themselves warm and active. So drying out is a problem, just like with plants. Remember with plants, they had stoma and all that, thick cuticle. So these guys don't have a thick cuticle, but they have a thick skin. A scaly, thick skin. And it's used for camouflage. It's also protection. And it prevents them from drying out because they're sitting out in the sun the whole time. The problem with this skin is the same problem with the exoskeleton in arthropods is it doesn't really grow very well. So you have to molt. You have to get, you see snake skins lying around or whatever. So they have to molt. And molting is expensive because you have a lot of energy gets used. You have to make whole new skin all of a sudden. But the thing that it is good is it heals any damage that they have. It's like they get a whole new skin. So it clears up their skin. Okay, I think that's it for, well, it's all the things that I want to say. So go through these notes, read through these notes. Make sure you give a thumbs up for these attendance posts so I can see that you're checking in and administration can see that, you guys still exist out there. Quiz and all this stuff will be on Friday. Yeah, hope you guys are doing well in your other classes.